The FBI has just released this photo of a person of interest in connection with the horrific killing of Charlie Kirk from yesterday. And this comes as they provided new updates and evidence today as they race to find this assassin. The conservative influencer was in the middle of debating a member of the public during an outdoor event at Utah Valley University when a single bullet ripped through his neck. Chaos, confusion, a shot that has been heard around the world. We are going to break down what we just heard with former FBI and CIA agent Tracy Walker. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Charlie Kirk, the co-founder of Turning Point USA, a stalwart friend to some of the most well-positioned people in our government, and yes, a controversial online presence with millions of followers, is dead at the age of 31. This is a dark day for our country. I talked about this on social media yesterday. I'm going to say it again. We cover some of the worst evils in this country almost daily, and I was still sickened and shocked and disgusted by what I saw yesterday. And I just tell everybody out there, please think about and pray for Charlie Kirk's family and friends, because they are now left with the new reality of pain and loss and confusion that victims' family members deal with every day in this country. This married father of two, he is credited with rallying young Republican voters during the 2024 presidential election. He had this famous debate-style events at colleges around the country, drawing praise from some, criticism from others, and this was his final one. It was during one of those college events on Wednesday that Kirk was shot and killed. And again, we are about to get into what the FBI just said. But it appears, based on their comments, that this may be a lone gunman who was atop a roof near the heart of Utah Valley University's campus in Orem. And we are learning, again, new details about that shooter right now from public safety officials and the FBI. We are going to show you the brand new press footage, and I'm going to be bringing on former FBI and CIA agent Tracy Walker to break down what these new developments mean, the potential evidence, how they're going to analyze it. Are we closer to actually catching the suspected shooter? We'll talk about it. But here's what we know. You had event goers who were lined up in an outdoor area to ask this conservative activist questions about things like gun violence and gender identity. And Kirk has this often, these answers that are booming over a microphone at the Quad. There's a lot of political excitement there. But again, controversial figure. And the New York Times reports that 3,000 people had turned out to see Kirk speak as he started another round of college tours. This one was called the American Comeback. Now, Kirk was seated underneath a canopy. He was surrounded by these metal barricades with his own personal security nearby. We can have a separate conversation, and maybe we will, about potentially the lack of security. But as seen in videos that were posted to social media, a member of the public standing just a few feet away was questioning Kirk about recent gun violence in America.
So, do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years?
Too many.
Okay. It's 5. Okay, now 5 is a lot, right? I'm gonna give you some credit. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
And at that moment, there was the sound of a single gunshot, and Charlie Kirk fell. If you've seen the videos online, they are awful. We have seen this video. It was taken by people in the crowd. It shows the moment that a bullet literally tore through Kirk's neck, sending him sprawling to the ground. It is horrific. He was carried to a nearby vehicle. He was rushed to the hospital. It was only a few miles away, but he was pronounced dead. And Utah officials would later say that they believe that this was a targeted attack, one bullet, one victim. Now, people at the event, they scattered in all directions. They were screaming. They were falling over one another. They were trying to figure out where the shots were coming from and if more bullets would be fired. The shooter was reportedly on the roof of a nearby campus building, the Losi Center. It's about 150 to 200 yards away from the gathering on the Quad. And an unverified video that was posted to social media, it appears to show a person laying down on top of the building. Now, law enforcement has not confirmed this video, nor have they said this figure on the roof is the shooter, but let's talk about what they did say, okay? This is new. So Utah's Commissioner of Public Safety and the FBI special agent in charge of the investigation provided brand new updates Thursday morning about the gunman. And that is what we want to talk about right now. So What have they learned about him so far? How was he able to get away? Take a look.
Through all that work last night, we were able to make a few breakthroughs. We were able to track the movements of the shooter. Starting at 11:52 a.m., the subject arrived on campus, shortly away from campus. We have tracked his movements onto the campus, through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location. After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus and into a neighborhood. Our investigators have worked through those neighborhoods, contacting anybody they can with doorbell cameras, witnesses, and have thoroughly worked through those communities, trying to identify any leads. We do have good video footage of this individual. We are not going to release that at this time. We are working through some technologies and some ways to identify this individual. If we are unsuccessful, we will reach out to you as the media and we will push that publicly to help us identify them. But we're confident in our abilities right now, and we would like to move forward in a manner that keeps everyone safe and moves this process appropriately.
And the FBI also revealed they found the suspected murder weapon.
This morning I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. So the FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm print, and forearm imprints for analysis. Now, I understand there are a lot of questions about motive. I assure you that all leads, tips are being fully investigated. As of this morning, we have received more than 130 tips. We thank the community for that. The FBI has brought every resource to bear, and we will continue to do so throughout the course of this investigation.
Also, this is just coming out from the Wall Street Journal. They're reporting that the ammunition that was used by Charlie Kirk's killer, it may have been engraved with transgender and anti-fascist ideology. If that is true, that makes a potential motivation for this killing a lot more clear, but we will see. We'll get more updates on that. Now, while officials aren't releasing very many details about the shooter's identity, they implied that he was able to blend in with a crowd on a college campus.
So what I'll release about the suspect is the suspect blended in well with a college institution. We're not releasing many details right now, and we will soon, but right now we're not. But that individual appears to be of college age. We are confident in our abilities to track that individual. If we're unsuccessful in identifying them immediately.
It's very, very interesting. And the Public Safety Commissioner also pointed out the importance of today's date, right, for American history, September 11th, and how law enforcement is once again coming together with one goal.
Historically, on 9/11, law enforcement has come together as a group to recognize and honor those that sacrificed to preserve the ideals of this country, the freedoms of this country. And instead, we find ourselves today hunting a murderer who chose to violate our rights, the rights of an individual within this country.
Now, again, I'm going to bring on Tracy. We're going to talk about what all this means. But the FBI and other agencies, they are actively working to try to track down this shooter. But there is misinformation, there is misidentification, it has run rampant so far. And just minutes after the shooting, there were details that started circulating online about an arrest. There were images on social media showing an older man being hauled away by multiple people. And soon officials would put out a statement saying that this man was not the shooter. He was arrested. He was arrested for obstruction, but he's not the shooter. And then hours later, FBI Director Kash Patel posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, that the subject for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. But not long after that, the director kind of clarified, saying the subject in custody has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement. Our investigation continues, and we will continue to release information in the interest of transparency. Now, the Public Safety Commissioner pointed out that those people do not deserve to be targeted in person or online.
Yesterday, during the investigative process, we located a couple of persons of interest. We interviewed those individuals, and after releasing them and after clearing them of being suspects, they faced scrutiny, they faced threats. We asked the public to be patient with the investigative process. These individuals were not suspects, they were people of interest. We ask that you do not impose into those people and that investigative process. They don't deserve that harassment for being subject to that.
And that does make you wonder, is that why they are not releasing video of the suspected shooter? We're going to talk about that. Now, there have been makeshift memorials that have sprung up on campus, and some people gathered at the state capitol in Salt Lake City to remember Charlie Kirk. Others paid tribute at Turning Point USA's headquarters out in Arizona. President Donald Trump, who was one of the first people to confirm that Kirk had indeed died, spoke from the Oval Office Wednesday night.
Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
And by the way, the president just announced that he is giving Charlie Kirk the Medal of Freedom posthumously. Tributes have also poured in on social media. Political advisor Stephen Miller posted on X, "Our hearts are shattered. America has lost one of its greatest champions. A loving family has lost the most extraordinary husband and father. All of us must now dedicate ourselves to defeating the evil that stole Charlie from this world." Again, FBI Director Kash Patel, who was close with Kirk, wrote on his personal X account, "Rest in peace, my friend, conservative titan Charlie Kirk. I am praying for Charlie and his family. His passion for American and fearless leadership inspired millions, and his impact will live on in this movement for generations." Former President Barack Obama posted on X. "We don't yet know what motivated the person who shot and killed Charlie Kirk, but this kind of despicable violence has no place in our democracy. Michelle and I will be praying for Charlie's family tonight, especially his wife Erica and their 2 young children." And as people were fleeing the school, armed law enforcement officers, they were pouring in. They were going from building to building to help escort people to safety. And just before 9 p.m. Eastern Time, school officials gave the all clear, saying there is no ongoing threat to the campus. Utah Valley University announced that classes were canceled, that the school will be closed until at least Monday. You know, we've been on top of this story from the very, very beginning. And we're able to do that, by the way, because of our sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, a firm with over 1,000 attorneys. You know why they're so big? Because they win a lot. They have recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. Think about that. In the past few months, a client in Florida received $12 million after the insurance company offered just $350,000. Out in Pennsylvania, a client was awarded $26 million. That is 40 times the insurer's $650,000 offer. You have another client in Pennsylvania who received $29 million after being offered only $500,000. And even if you think your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not just start a claim and fight for what you deserve? Morgan & Morgan, they make it so simple. You can start a claim from your phone in just 8 clicks. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC sidebar by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code on screen. Okay, so I want to break down what all of this means. This presser just ended, and we're bringing on right now former CIA and FBI agent, friend of the show, Tracy Walker. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. So let's just talk about what we heard here from this presser. They were able to track the movements of the shooter, saying that the shooter arrived on campus at 11:52, tracking the movements through the stairwell to the roof. They find the shooting location, saying the shooter jumped off the building after the shooting, fled into the neighborhood, that they start canvassing the neighborhood, looking for doorbell footage, contacting anyone that has footage. They have confirmed they have video footage of the shooter, but they are not going to release it, and they are working on ways to ID this person. Before we go any further into the revelations from this press conference, let's start there. What do you make of that police work, and what can we glean from that?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Obviously, it's relatively quick police work, in my opinion. I said yesterday that this was going to be a bit of a cumbersome process. In a way, and I don't mean this in a bad way, you have too much digital evidence. You have 3,000 college students, not all, but you have 3,000 college students who all have phones, all have videos. You have CCTV probably all over the school. That takes a long time to go through. So what that tells me is it was probably all hands on deck, obviously most of yesterday and then into today to review that footage. Also, what's interesting to me is it sounds, just if he arrived at campus or the shooter arrived at campus at 11:52, as they said in the press conference, that this person was actually not laying in wait all that long. I mean, they were laying in wait a bit, but we're not talking hours or anything like that. And so this is someone that knew obviously what was going to take place on the campus that day, knew, in my opinion, probably studied Charlie, how he spoke, how long he answered questions for, and was really prepared in what they were doing.
But also knew where Charlie was going to be positioned and knew exactly where to go. Like the idea of that roof, 200 yards away, set up a position, that was planned. That's what's eerie about it. It doesn't, I mean, again, we're just trying to take it piece by piece here, but it doesn't seem that someone showed up and tried to figure out where's the best place to go. This feels very quick and very coordinated and very planned.
Oh yeah, there's no question. I said that yesterday actually on News Nation that I think this took quite a bit of planning, in my opinion, because the reality is I think they knew where the event would take place simply
Right.
because it had been promoted beforehand. And they probably knew that that would be that, I guess, what they're calling fishbowl gathering place. So kind of think Las Vegas mass shooting, that also was sort of a fishbowl situation, if you will. And they knew that he would probably be covered a bit with that pop-up tent. That's what he does tend to do in those outside settings, if you will. I believe this is a person that I do think if they go back had been on campus before, in my opinion, and had probably scoped out some of the buildings that they felt would be the best and the most opportune to take that shot.
I'll get to this weapon that apparently they recovered in a second, but what's the technology? What is the ways they can work to ID this potential shooter from video footage?
So there's a couple ways. There's obviously facial recognition technology. Now, I don't know how good it is with CCTV or with the Ring doorbell cameras, right? I am not sure how clear of a picture they have of this individual. But one thing you also can do, and they actually did this with Mangione that you brought up before, was mensurate this individual. So how tall are they? Approximately how much do they weigh? You can actually glean all of that information from video footage, even CCTV video footage, which isn't good.
Okay, let's talk about this weapon. They announced they recovered a weapon, a bolt-action rifle, found in a wooded area where this alleged shooter had escaped. The FBI announced they are analyzing this weapon. Are you surprised that seems to be the weapon, the suspected murder weapon here, a bolt-action rifle based on what we saw and what we heard yesterday? B, the fact of where it was recovered and why it was ultimately discarded. And C, how do they analyze the weapon?
So I'm actually not surprised that it was found. That would be the first thing, quite frankly, that someone in a situation like this would do. A bolt action rifle isn't something that you're obviously going to be able to conceal and run around with, right? Anyone would be sort of picking you off if they saw that. I'm not surprised. I said initially, based on the sound, that this was probably a rifle of some sort. I didn't even need to see it to hear that. It was pretty clear, in my opinion, what kind of weapon this was. I'm not at all surprised it was discarded. I don't know how much evidence they're really going to get off of it. Again, as we talked about before, this person was very prepared. I feel they probably had gloves on in some way, shape, or form, probably had a hat on, any hair was out of the way. So I'll be surprised if it's fruitful in terms of identifying the individual, but obviously it would be used later at a trial or something like that.
So, in other words, you are hesitant to say they might be able to recover fingerprints from the weapon. However, can they find out where it was registered to? Can they find out who purchased it?
Sure. Obviously, all of that is in play, of course. I'm just being honest, I would be very
Yeah.
surprised if someone, and we talked about this, of this kind of planned nature, right? Scoping out the school, the situation, all of those things would use a weapon that was registered to them or didn't
Sure.
have the serial number already removed. Now, again, it's great when criminals make mistakes. So maybe that is on there, but I would have thought that that would have been one of the first things they would have done was either remove the serial number or use a weapon that was stolen and not registered.
The bolt action rifle is that tough to fire? If we're talking about firing it from a roof about 200 yards away, shooting Charlie Kirk in the neck, is that a tough shot? Are you saying there has to be a level of training, or what should we be thinking about in terms of this weapon?
Yeah, I've been asked that question actually a lot. I think we want to think that this is some kind of a trained assassin. You know, maybe we see that in movies, and that's something that we want to see. But the reality is a 200-yard shot, which is about what this is. Again, I don't have the exact data, but a 200-yard shot. I believe he was probably aiming for the head, came in a little bit low, but again, I don't know for sure. This is someone who is familiar, obviously, with weapons. There's no question. I don't think if you've never held a weapon before, you would be able to do that. But this is someone that probably had a scope attached, had been sitting there for a few minutes, got the target in their sights, and got off that shot. So I think it's someone who is moderately to highly familiar with weapons, but not some kind of a trained assassin. Now, if you were talking about 600 yards or more, sure. But I don't feel that that's far enough for this to be some kind of a sharpshooter.
Is a bolt action rifle common? Do a lot of people own these?
Yeah, I mean, I would say again, it depends on the area, right? I
Sure,
think
sure.
if you're living in the middle of New York City, right, or Los Angeles, no. But this is Orem, Utah. There is wilderness. There are hunters. There are, right, there is a culture surrounding guns. I live in Texas. People have these. So I think it just depends, to be completely honest
Right.
with you, on where they live.
Okay, they also indicated that they have recovered a footwear impression, a palm print, a forearm print or impression. How do they recover that? What do they do with that information? How do they ultimately process that to determine the identity of those people, of that
So
person?
the footprint is going to be very similar to what we saw in the Brian Kochberger, Idaho case. Obviously, they're going to photograph it. They may even cast it, right, to get an actual impression of that footprint and save it. Then once the problem is let's just say it's a Nike footprint. There are millions of people that own Nikes, and so that's going to be something that might not help them immediately identify the individual, but may help them actually convict this individual if they find them and find that exact shoe print. So that's going to be good for evidence later in terms of obtaining a conviction. Now, a palm print obviously is not the same as a fingerprint, right? It's not as, there may not be a database registered for that, but what they may be able to recover off of that is DNA. And we know how great, obviously, genealogical DNA has been in terms of identifying someone. So if this is not someone in the system, they may be able to do that with a palm print.
And when they say that this is a person who blended in well with the college institution, what does that tell you?
I mean, what that tells me, I believe, and I said this yesterday, that this person had every intention of using the college's cover for themselves. I mean, full stop. So what that tells me is this is someone who at least looks like they belong on a college campus. So we're talking 18 to maybe later 20s. May not be, but looks that way. Someone who really wouldn't draw necessarily attention to themselves, doesn't stick out in this situation. So if someone saw this person walking, to this building, if you will. We also have to think about the fact that there could have been a change of clothes. Afterwards, they said they saw someone in all black clothing, running away from that rooftop. This could have been someone who came to the college in, I guess, plain clothes, not all black necessarily, and then changed out afterwards to disguise themselves more. So I think this is someone who definitely looked like they belonged there.
If I remember correctly from the press conference, they said they got, what, 130 tips? It's a
Mhm.
lot. How do they sort through it to determine what's credible?
I don't mean to sound rude. It's a lot, but it's actually not as many as I thought. If you want me to be
Okay.
completely honest with
Okay.
you, Jesse, I actually thought that we would have thousands, simply because of the sheer volume, right, of how many students were there. Then you have a neighborhood, right, with ring doorbell cameras, all of the things. You also have a public in this area who is probably on high alert and wants to help. And so I actually thought we would be in the thousands, if you want me to be fully transparent. I'm not saying 130 is low. That's good. That's a great place to start. I'm just honestly surprised there's not more.
Are you surprised the shooter hasn't been caught? I mean, this was a very public area. There wasn't a ton of security, right? They talk about maybe the lack of law enforcement, but they were quick on the scene after the shooting. 3,000 people there. Everybody had cameras. Are you surprised that the suspected shooter was not caught yet?
Yeah, that's a touchy subject because yesterday I actually said on the news when they said they had caught someone, and I think it was sort of an older white male that they had
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
ground. I actually said, I do not believe that this is the shooter. I believe it is too quick to capture him, and I believe the shot came from the roof. And everyone piled on me for that. And so I am actually not surprised that they haven't caught this individual. I think that this was highly planned. This person absolutely had an egress route. And if this shot did come from the roof, it's not going to be someone who was able to be caught immediately on the ground exiting the scene.
And I wanted your explanation about what happened yesterday. There were reports about individuals who were detained. They were let go. FBI Director Kash Patel saying that a subject was in custody but released after interrogation. I think there was a lot of confusion, particularly online, about where the day was going to end. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. This isn't like political in any way. I would say this about any FBI director. I do not believe that they should be putting on social media until they know for certain that this is absolutely the individual, because it
Right.
does create confusion around the public. And then what happens is people let their guards down, and you may miss other tips, legitimate tips of individuals who really did perpetrate this. So I wasn't a huge fan of that, but I understand the need to want to arrest someone who did this.
When you think about how the shooting happened, talking about shootings, Charlie Kirk was talking about shootings. The last word that he said before he was shot was violence. You see him get shot. Do you think this is a situation where it was one person acting alone, or do you think it was coordinated and there was some help? I mean, we don't know at this point. I've seen a lot of people talking online about what may or may not have happened. From your perspective, we talked about how it might have been planned. Would you suspect that there could be multiple people involved?
So I think so, but not in the sense that you may think, Jesse. So
Okay.
what I actually think is there are these, well, they're from Telegram subchannels, those kinds of things on social media where individuals talk about this kind of thing and talk about this kind of violence. So I 100% think that there were individuals in this chat room assisting this person, goading this person on, wanting them to do it, because that absolutely exists in this internet subculture. So that's where I think these accomplices came from, and that's what ultimately needs to be shut down.
Real quick, all the videos, all the participants, does the FBI, does local law enforcement, do they try to interview all these people? Do they try to get all this footage? What happens?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, like we said before, this is what 3,000-ish
Yeah, yeah.
students, and it's real difficult to confiscate all of their cell phones, especially ones that ran away, right? So my guess is what they're going to do is anyone they came into contact with, they probably took their phones or asked for their phones. Then also any video that they're seeing being leaked online, shared on social media, they're going to find that and they're going to find the person who did that, not in a bad way, but they want that video. And so I think those are the things that they're probably doing right now and yesterday.
Tracy, before I let you go, before you have to jump back to News Nation and go. And you're such a brilliant voice on this. Do you have confidence that the shooter is going to be caught within the next few days?
Oh gosh. I would like to hope so. My only concern is that this person has quite a bit of hours of a head start. There is an airport only 45 minutes away. And if we don't have a name on that individual, they actually could be out of the US by this point, and that becomes complicated. So I'd say my confidence is probably 65%.
Tracy, listen, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, literally, this press conference happened 5 minutes. It ended 5 minutes before you came on. Always appreciate your insight. You can check Tracy out online on News Nation. She's a contributor there. Really, thank you so much for taking the time. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Jesse. I really appreciate it.
And that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll see you next time.